So as co-founder of DNS Professional Coaching, Deborah helps executive job seekers, business owners, and sales leaders worldwide to evaluate and optimize their LinkedIn profiles and get noticed online. She holds a Master's of Science in Management and is a certified digital branding strategist through Career Thought Leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, Deborah Boggs. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, guys. So great to meet everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about how to leverage LinkedIn as a business leader to help attract opportunities and really, grow trust in your network and things like that. And so we're going to talk a lot about optimizing your profile first, because that's a really important part of this process. It's hard to build a network and build trust and really leverage your LinkedIn profile or your LinkedIn, as a lead generating tool if you don't have the other piece of that, which is, really a really strong profile. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about, building your network and how to post and how to gain, visibility and things like that. But as I go through, feel free to ask questions. Mitch, if you could maybe watch if people either raise their hand or put something in the comments, I'm happy to answer questions as we go through. And then quick question, because I'm not on top of my game this morning. How long do we have, Mitch?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. We have, you can go 45, you can go 40, about 40 minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right. And I know you're all busy and it's breakfast, so I'll make this quick. But yeah, as you have questions, hop in. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about your LinkedIn goal first, and then we're going to talk about, some of the major real estate areas on your LinkedIn profile. So creating a standout headline, your photo, optimizing your about section. Then we're going to talk about a company page, because that's an important part that a lot of business leaders who are maybe solopreneurs or who have smaller businesses don't do, but it is an important part of the process. And then finally, we're going to talk about lead generation and networking. All right. And a little bit about why this is important. LinkedIn has about 700 total members worldwide. The majority of the members are in the US, but it is a global platform. And about 100 million of those members log on daily. And so, that's a huge platform. The good thing about this is when you're thinking about posting or you're thinking about visibility on LinkedIn, 100 million members is actually a lot less than some of the other social platforms. And so there's not as much noise as there is on other platforms as well. And everybody, the majority of people on LinkedIn are, decision makers in their companies and things like that, mostly professionals. So they're good prospects, and it's, and it's less of a crowded marketplace than say Instagram or Facebook would be. And finally, because we're going to talk about your profiles, it's because complete profiles are about 27 times more likely to be found in searches. And that's huge. When people are looking for people who do what you do, it's an important part of being found in searches. Like me, a lot of my inbound leads come from just people doing searches on LinkedIn. And because I was late to our call this morning, this is ironic, but when buyers pull up your profile, one of two things will happen. They'll either gain confidence in you or they won't. And I got that from LinkedIn's sales blog, but I think that's a really important piece, especially now when so many things are remote and we're doing business all over the place. It's important to make sure that what we're putting out there on LinkedIn is our first impression, is the very first thing we want people to see about us. And we want to make sure that it's telling the full story. All right, so we want to stand out in a sea of other people who may do similar work that we do. I live on the coast of Maine. We grow a ton of blueberries up here, so that's why I chose blueberries. All right, we're going to talk about headlines and profile photos, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because it's, as you can see, it's really visible. Your headline and your profile photo are something that everybody sees if they look at your profile, even if they don't read anything else. So it's an important part that we need to make sure we get right. But before I do that, does anybody have any questions?
Deborah, I'm monitoring the chat box, so if somebody does raise their hand, I'll slide in.
Perfect, thanks. Okay. So let's talk about headlines. It's prime real estate. And the reason is, not only is it shown if people look at your profile, it comes up right at the top. It's also the heaviest weighted section for keyword optimization. Just like in Google, when you want to add SEO to your website or all those amazing things that Mitch's company does, um, on LinkedIn, you can do it to make sure you're showing up in searches as well. And your headline is really prime real estate for this section. You have about 220 characters to work with. That includes spaces. I will say 220 is fairly new, and it's really, really long and kind of looks a little clunky. In my opinion, about 160 to 180 characters is optimal, because it's long enough to add keywords, but it's not so long that it gets cut off or looks like you added everything in the world to your headline. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to build an optimized headline, and we'll do this together a little bit. These are examples of a few. So like this is mine, the very top one from a little while ago. I think I've changed it up a little bit. This is someone who's in talent acquisition, and she added, what she does and who she does these things for. So we really want to make sure that our headline is not only keyword optimized, but also lets people know who we are and what we do. That way they know right away whether you would be a good fit for them.
Wow.
And when you add, anytime you comment on someone's post, or anytime, you post something or whatever, your name, your headshot, and your headline show up. And so that's important, because it's not just people that come to your profile, but it's anytime you engage on the platform, they're going to see your headline. And that's an important thing. I've gotten clients who, paid clients who have called me and said, or, reached out on LinkedIn and said, I noticed you commented on so-and-so's, post. I am looking for a resume writer, things like that. So it is an important thing to think about, and we're going to do that a little bit here together. So I know that the majority of you guys are business owners or looking for lead generation. So, when we talk a little bit about the LinkedIn goal, it's not just for job seekers, and this feeds into headlines a little bit here. But you want to think about what you want to use LinkedIn for. Some people use it as their job seeking. Some people use it just kind of as an area to keep all of their professional contacts, but they don't necessarily engage in the platform. And then other people are using it for lead generation, for business purposes, for thought leadership. That's how I use my that's how I use my profile. So I'll be sharing a lot of my profile as we go through this, only because it's been optimized in such a way for, for business leaders to help grow lead generation. So the way you want to think about your headline is, there's a couple of different options, especially for, especially for a lot of you who are looking for lead generation. And so, you can think about it as a little bit of a formula. So maybe industry, your job title, and your value or expertise. And this is usually for more of job seekers. But for us, I like to do your title, your company name, doing what for who. So think about, you still want to let them know who you are at the company, who the company is, but then what is it that you're offering, and make sure that's keyword optimized. And then who are your target client? And so if we go back a slide and look at mine. So I'm an executive resume writer. Now, I think my new headline, I wrote these when it was still 120 characters. It's pretty new that's gone to 220. So my headline is longer now with my company name, but executive resume writer, and LinkedIn profile optimizer. I did this because I wanted these keywords. I wanted resume writer. I wanted LinkedIn profile. I wanted the word executive because I wanted people to know kind of who I typically work with. And then helping clients stand out in the modern job market. Now that's changed a little bit. I've added some things and made it a little bit longer, but this is kind of where I started that whole, what do I do and who do I do it for? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes just to kind of jot down some thoughts as we're looking at this slide of what your optimized headline could look like. And then while we do that, I'm happy to take questions, or, we can talk through examples if you'd like, if someone's, struggling with one or thinking about one. And like I said, I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but it's really critical to get this part right, because it does, feed into everything else in your profile.
think
Hey,
Vernon was making a comment earlier, but I don't know if it's premature or not. Vernon, what were you asking about the personal versus the business profile? Something?
My question was, and I've heard it more than once, that people have both a personal profile on LinkedIn and they have a business profile on LinkedIn. And I'm trying to, get some understanding as to why you would have two different profiles on LinkedIn. Deborah?
Yes, that's a really great question, and we are going to talk about it. But I'm so glad that you asked it in that way, because it does it is confusing for some people. Well, why do you need both? The good news is, well, good news, bad news. You do need both, but you don't have to do anything with the business profile really once it's up. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll show you what it looks like and how it's different. But can you tell me a little bit about your business as well? Because that might. Do you have employees? Are you solo entrepreneur? What does that look like?
I am a solo entrepreneur. Uh, my area of expertise is mindfulness and emotional intelligence. The market that I'm looking at, or my niche, is I go after business owners who are ready to take their company to the next level using mindfulness and emotional intelligence integrated together.
Perfect. Okay. Yes. And so it may seem like, you're a solo entrepreneur. Why do you need both? And we'll definitely talk about the importance of that and kind of what that means towards the end here. But I'm so glad you asked it in that way, and I'll answer that as people are kind of jotting down some ideas for their headlines. LinkedIn is really meant for individuals and not for businesses. And so if you post and things like that, it's going to be more effective from your personal profile. But from your company page, the value of having a company page is it just legitimizes your business a little bit. It elevates you from looking like a solo entrepreneur to a real business owner.
Mhm.
And it also allows you to have a logo that comes up next to your experience section, which just really elevates the look and feel of your profile from a professionalism standpoint.
Okay.
But if you post and connect with people and all of those things, do that from your personal profile, because that's what LinkedIn likes, and that's what LinkedIn will promote more than a business page. The good news is the business page can be connected to your page, and we'll talk a little bit about this. And then it also is very easy to do. It's a lot less content than your personal profile. Shouldn't take long, especially if you've really built out your business page or your personal page to highlight your business. And it's a way to also funnel people straight from your company page to your website. So that's nice as well.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions about headlines, or anybody want to read one before we move on?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hey, Deborah, I'm really enjoying this. So what's the big mistake that you see people making when it comes to creating headlines?
Yes, really excellent question. The big mistake that I see people making, and sometimes it's easy to do, and it makes me crazy about how LinkedIn kind of works, is they use the default headline that comes up that's just your company name and title. And so that defaults, and that's what it does for everybody, but that doesn't give anybody really information on your value or really what your company does or anything like that. And it's a wasted opportunity to really showcase what you do, to show up in more searches, to maximize your visibility every time you comment on someone's post, is just to do that company name and title. The problem is and be careful of this. I'm so glad you asked that question. As you go through and are making updates to your profile, or anytime you add a new experience to your profile, my husband just brought me coffee. I'm so distracted right now. Thank you so much. Anytime you make an update, it will ask you, there's a little checkbox that'll ask you to say, update your headline. And so, but really when you're updating your LinkedIn profile, you start with your headline, you optimize it, it looks beautiful, it's perfect. And then as you go back through and you're making updates, it automatically will overwrite the beautiful work you did on your headline and overwrite it with your company name and title. And so a lot of people make that mistake by accident, but it really is a wasted opportunity. I'm so glad you asked.
And are you going to get into the strategy of creating a great headline now?
Yeah, so the strategy would really be kind of thinking about this formula around, think about your title and your company name, which is, part you do need, but then, think about how to doing what for who. And so when we think about strategy, I'll go back a page here. When we think about strategy, like this woman is a talent acquisition recruiter. So this is what she does. She's enabling nurses and allied health programs to attract, recruit, and retain top educators. So she's talking about exactly what she does and who she does it for, letting people know, while making it keyword rich. And so it's a lot more, a lot more content than just having, and a lot more valuable content than just having your company name and title, because she would have just like talent acquisition at XYZ company.
And this might be a little bit off subject, but there's applications, platforms like LinkedIn Helper. Are you familiar with any of those?
A little bit. I've seen that there are some AI like writers that'll write for your like summary section and things like that. I've played with a couple. I've not played with LinkedIn Helper. I will say, if anything, and I'm glad you brought that up just real quick, if anyone's thinking about using bots or any kind of third-party application that may like interact with your LinkedIn profile, for lack of a better term, LinkedIn is getting really, really stringent about third-party apps that may like, interact with your profile in any way. And you run the risk of getting your profile shut down. And they're really, really strict about it right now. And so it's happening a lot. Like my virtual assistant got her profile locked a couple weeks ago because she was so efficient they thought she was a bot. And she's not. So if anybody's thinking about some of those third-party apps, and a lot of people will get messages in your inbox from people saying, I can help with lead generation, things like that. Really think about avoiding those. They're against LinkedIn's user agreement, and LinkedIn is really cracking down on it. And you could risk the loss of your profile and all of your contacts and everything else. So. All right, so we're going to move on to background photos real quick. I want to talk about background photos because it is such an important part of a standout profile, especially for a business leader, because you can really, it's great real estate. It doesn't do anything from a keyword optimization standpoint, but everybody sees it the second they come on your profile. And it's really a great opportunity to market your business and tell people what you do. And so, we're using mine again here because this is what I look like when I actually put makeup on and I don't roll out of bed to do a presentation. But, so my headline or my background photo here, has my company logo. It has what I do. And then it's got a little bit of my, other information that I think people might like. And then like this gentleman works, he sells insurance adjustment online course background that just really kind of showed what he does. It legitimizes his business a little bit because he is a solopreneur and he wanted people to know, yes, I'm real. Yes, this is a real company. And so just adding a background photo or, a customized background can really help you with that. And then this woman is head of culture at TaskUs. And so it was just a really nice way to show, the fun culture that's there, right? She's not a business lead, well, she's a business leader, but she's not, looking for lead generation. She's just wanting to show the fun, funky culture that TaskUs has. And then this woman, the reason I included this is because this is what you automatically get through LinkedIn. So as you can see, it's a really wasted opportunity for LinkedIn to have just that blue. Everybody has it. And if you're really building a business like Vernon and building mindfulness for business leaders and things like that, it's really a great opportunity to highlight your business. And again, it just kind of elevates the legitimacy, really makes you, real, like you're an established business, even if you're just getting started or even if you feel like it's just you. And Canva is a really great way. Does anybody use Canva here?
Yeah, I do.
Great. I love Canva. I can't get enough of it. Canva is great for custom backgrounds. And so it's free. You can, I think it has an option for LinkedIn background photo. If not, use the Facebook template for background photos, either way. And you can easily, pop in your logo, they've got pre-designed ones. It makes it very, very easy. But guys, even if you're not doing a custom background, if maybe feeling like adding your logo and adding some content in there is a little bit overboard for right now, then I suggest checking out Unsplash and looking up background photos, and you can get a ton of free photos that are just backgrounds, like literally anything beyond this LinkedIn kind of blue, gray, boring one here will help make your profile a little bit more visually interesting, memorable, really elevate the look and feel of it. So anything other than the LinkedIn blue gray is better. Any questions about background photos? All right. Oh.
Deborah, I dropped a link in there to the Canva banner background creator.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Sanders, did you have a question? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry, I actually do two things. One half of my brain, the other half of my brain is a wine concierge. So in that instance, I actually would like to promote both things.
Okay.
How do I do that? Do I get 2 business pages?
So, yes, I'm so glad you brought this up because this happens with busy entrepreneurs and a lot. And it's a question that comes up a ton. I'm so glad that you brought it up. Okay, so to be most effective, at not muddying your message, you need to pick a lane. And Dr. Sanders, do you mind reading again? Sorry, I think there's some feedback. I might be the only person who hears it though. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. To keep from confusing your audience, it's helpful to pick a lane, but it doesn't. It's helpful to have a primary business or a primary, reason for LinkedIn or something you're promoting, but then you can still weave in the secondary. It's just really hard to make both the focus, right? And so, if you do want to promote the wine concierge, which I love, I think that's so interesting and fun. And also you can weave into just making your profile a little bit more fun because that makes you different in your other job as well. But what I would do in that instance is maybe not do a branded background, maybe do a general background of some kind. That way you're not all for one thing. You can weave them both into your about section, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then, yes, I would include 2 business pages because you can have experience even if they overlap. So like 2 current things going on. And the business pages will show the logo of each thing next to each experience, which will be important. But from a standpoint of like your headline and your background photo and things like that, I wouldn't try to do both and bring both front and center because it's going to minimize one or the other, right? It's going to confuse your audience. And so, like, to give you an idea, for me, DNS professional coaching is my sole business, but I don't just do, so I market working with executive job seekers, helping them with all of their career documents, LinkedIn profile, getting them ready for, high level job searches. But I also do a ton of work with, people like you guys who are building online profiles for business needs for LinkedIn, but I don't market it because I don't want to confuse my target audience. And so rather than try to fit everything in and all the different things that I do, I pick a lane and really focus on one. And then through networking and, meeting people and being on time for presentations, I get leads for the other. So if that kind of makes sense too, LinkedIn may not be the best platform for the wine concierge. Maybe you focus on Facebook for that or vice versa. So, just my advice would be, and I know I've spent a lot of time on this, but that question does come up a lot actually, is just don't try to make both front and center because you'll confuse your audience and muddy your message for both.
Deborah,
Yes,
would
sir.
it be safe to say that promote your day job? Kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's your primary business where you make your money. Kind of.
I would promote your day job. Exactly. Especially if, if you're I get a lot of people who are building a side business on top of their day job and they get a little, and maybe they're employed at their day job and they're not sure how to show both because they don't want to show their employer that they're really focusing on the side job. That gets a little bit messy. I don't know if that's anybody in this group's situation. We can talk about it offline if it is. But otherwise, yeah, really promote your bread and butter and then think about the platform that makes sense for your side business. And maybe it's not LinkedIn and maybe it is, but yeah, think about those things. You don't want to muddy the message. All right. Okay, we're going to talk about profile photos for a minute. The reason is this is your first impression. This is what people see of you first, and so you want to make sure that it is optimized in such a way that you're really building trust with your audience. That you are, like not rolling out of bed and doing a presentation with no makeup on, right? So this is what you really want to focus on. And so a couple of best practices for headshots. I just want to talk about this real quick. Is to so you'll notice in each of these pictures, it's from the collarbone up. You want it to be, you want your profile photo to be close up. And the reason is people can't build a human connection with you if they can't see your face. And so if it's a wide shot or it's a whole body shot or something like that, they're not going to be able to see your face enough to build a human connection. And that's really important for for really building trust in the platform. So think about doing close up. The other best practices I want you guys to think about is to be smiling and looking directly at the camera. Those other two things really help build rapport with your picture and perform best with audiences on LinkedIn. So I chose these photos because these people are really hitting best practice. It doesn't have to be something you have professionally done. If you don't have the time or resources to do a professional photo right this second, that's fine. My advice to you would be to take a photo for LinkedIn with intention. A lot of people pick a photo from a wedding or a time they were out dressed up and they think, okay, well, this is what I need. But really, if you want to think about who your target audience is, how you would show up to meet with them in person, and how how you want them to see you, then you can take a photo at home. Like this woman here is a really close friend of mine, so I like to use her photo. And she took this picture in front of a piece of art in her home, right? She just got dressed with intention and took a photo in front of a piece of art because she wanted something a little bit more interesting than just a wall. But if you want to go outside and do one outside and just take a photo, or you can get a professional headshot. If you do have the resources for a professional headshot, I do suggest that's best, especially for the LinkedIn professional platform if we're doing lead generation. But don't feel like it has to hinder you from having a great profile photo. I do have a blog. I can give you guys a link later to ways to take a professional headshot at home if you need that as well. Any questions about headshots before we move on to the About section? All right, great. Okay, so I want to talk about the About section really quickly, and then we'll go through. So the main parts of LinkedIn that I want to talk to you guys about are done. Now we're going to go through several of the kind of meaty sections of LinkedIn with the content. Then we're going to talk about lead generation. So we're going to go through these sections really quickly because I want to talk about how to engage on the platform. But the high visibility, high real estate areas of your profile we've talked about. So your About section, this is the summary section at the top, and it shows up before your experience sections. And the couple things that I want to talk to you about here is in the About section, before they click on to see more, they only see your audience will only see about 3 lines, less so in mobile. So you want to make sure those top 3 lines really say everything about you that you really want them to take away, because they may never click to see more. So make sure that it shows, exactly what you want people to know about you, as much as possible. Kind of bring them in with what, also try to, add a little personality, make it a little bit, the other thing I want to say is make it first person. A lot of people will try to write their About section in the third person, like it's an executive bio. So Deborah works with, interesting, talented, successful executives, which she does this, she does that. I suggest not doing that on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a personal platform and you can't create a human connection if it's in the third person. It also just reads a little awkwardly to me because it's your profile, and writing in the third person it comes off a little stilted and a little flat. So best practice is first person. That's a question I get a lot. All right, the other thing I want to talk about here is best practice on how to lay out your content. A lot of people will I see, write like really lengthy paragraphs of blocks of text. no one is going to read your profile word for word. You know, I tell my clients if I'm running their profile, you know, me and them are literally the only people who are ever going to read it word for word. So you want to make sure it's easy to scan through quickly. So you want to make sure that people can get the content they want to get about you as quickly as possible, because they're just going to scan, and make it easy for them to find the information that they want. So, you know, a little bit about my background. You know, I add my contact information in here. I add kind of what we do, some bullets to let them know kind of how we do it. This is old. I need to my actual profile is updated, but I need to update my my slide here. And then it's great to add a specialties or a skills or a, you know, services include section. And the reason is it lets people know not only what I do, but it also is a really, so we talked about the headline being keyword rich as far as it being, you know, heavily weighted in the LinkedIn algorithm. Your about section is too. So make sure that you optimize your about section with some keywords you want to be found for. So that's some of the best practices for the about section is, you know, bite-sized chunks of content, some bullets to help it stand out a little bit. Make sure to include your contact information and leverage the keyword area. I will say, when this was written, LinkedIn's about section characters were about 1,000 characters less than they are now. It's about 2,600 characters now. That's really, really long for an about section. No one's going to read all that content. So really about this length is best. And this is about 1,500 characters. Just because you don't want anyone to look at your about section and be completely overwhelmed and move on. All right, we're going to talk about the featured section next. This is fairly.
Can I ask you something, Deborah? I'm sorry.
Of course. No, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, well, I'm a little confused about language, you know, and when you say that you prefer to talk about I and no she of her, what did you really mean with that?
Oh yes, so thank you. So writing in the first person is writing as if you're talking, and so I would say, you know, I do this for my clients. I do that. My clients and I, you know, I'm talking directly to someone. The third person is if you're writing about someone. So I would say, you know, instead of saying I work with, you know, executive job seekers, I would say Deborah works with executive job seekers. And I'm taking the personal piece out of it because I'm really writing about someone that is detached from me by saying, you know, so prior to launching DNS professional coaching, Deborah's professional experience includes leadership roles in blah, 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 rather than my professional experience includes. So things like that. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yes, but also, you know, I always have this question for my business, and the question is also when I'm writing these things is I have been in the insurance business for more than 25 years, or we had been. You know, because I don't know when I had to use the I have been or the we. Most of the professionals, you know, in different meetings I'm going with, they use we. We, and I think that we is more strong than I.
Yep.
But in English, when you say we, it's about you.
Right. Right. Are you the business owner, Jorge?
What? Excuse me?
Are you the business owner?
I'm the business owner. Yes. Yeah. You know,
yes.
You know, with this we and I always have the problem where to go with, because it's a big difference. Yeah, we is more strong. So what do you think about it?
That's a great question. So for me, I like to, in the about section, I like to make it about me personally rather than we, because the about section is about is about my experience. But then in the experience section, or if I do a section about our company, so like right here, I put our reputation for delivering highest quality, because I do have a team. I have a small nationwide team. And so I do include we and our when I'm talking about the business, but when I'm talking about my experience, I say I. And so later in my experience section, so this is the about section that shows up at the very top, but when I talk about the experience section later, which we'll look at, I use we a lot more because I'm talking about my team and my business and what we as a group do, not necessarily my accomplishments.
Okay, yeah. So basically, that I have the answer now. This is both. It depends. It depends on the context.
Exactly. Yes, it
You
does.
have been working in insurance business for more than 25 years, and I can help you with. So
Exactly.
that's okay. I got it. Okay. All
My
right.
business, blah, 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 we do XYZ.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Yep. No, I'm so glad you asked the question. It's a great question. Okay, the featured section. Now, this is fairly new, so a lot of people aren't using it, which means it's really prime real estate for you guys to show off some of your work. The featured section appears directly under the About section, and it's a great way to link your website so it's really visible, link any media mentions or articles or videos you've ever done, or important posts that you'd like people to see. You know, if you've done a blog or things like that, you can link them here in the featured section, and then people will see up to 5 of them. So, and you can move them around and move them front and, you know, back and things like that. So like for me, I do my company website, and then here I like to, you know, I just like to show off that, you know, we were featured in the Wall Street Journal. And so those are some of the things that I include in my featured section. But occasionally, this is old too, because I also have now a new one that is a post that features my corporate video. And so it's just some of the things that you can include there. You don't have to include 5. That's how many that people will see. So it at the very least, include your company website. You know, if you're including nothing else, make sure that's there. But if you have a corporate video or blog or anything else, it's great to include a few more just to kind of round out. Again, it's one of those things people may never actually like click on and look at, but it just elevates the look and feel and professionalism of your profile. All right, an experience section. And this is where, Jorge, we can talk a little bit about, I include we specialize in working with, you know, we also help executives with. So I talk about we, because now I'm highlighting my company and not me per se, because like I said, we do have a small team. There's about 8 of us all over the country. And so I want to make sure that we're not just talking about me here. And so this is where, you know, you can include your, what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is when you write your headline. So co-founder, and I could just stop there, but the headline is actually a really keyword rich area that you can be found for in searches. So I also like to include a couple of keywords about what I do, because I want to make sure that I show up in those searches. So, you know, I can just do co-founder, but then here are the things that I do. And then we can go into what you do. So again, same thing we talked about in the about section, make sure that it's bite-sized content. It's also okay for a lot of your content about your company and what you do to overlap in the about section and the experience section. Because as we talked about, very few people are going to read it word for word. And people may only read the experience section or only read the about section. And so it's okay if a lot of the content and, you know, information about your company or your services or who you serve overlaps and is in both places, because that means it'll definitely get seen, and that's important. So that's okay. You know, you can reuse content for those 2 sections. Oh, real quick, I want to go back to this page real quick and show you when we get to the company page section. If you don't have a company page, this shows up as just a gray, that gray box with the little buildings in it. But if you have a company page, then your company logo shows up. It's nice and crisp and clean. You know, your audience can click on it. It'll go to your company page. They can see your, you know, then from there, then go straight to your website. If you don't have a company page, this is just that little gray general box, and you can't, and it doesn't go anywhere. And it just kind of, it leaves your audience with nowhere to go for more information. And so just having a company page, someone had asked why you would have both. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but it just really elevates from a visual standpoint. If nothing else, it elevates the look of your profile by having an actual logo for your business and not just that gray box. It just keeps it from looking like a side job. And I think we're on company pages now. Let me go back, make sure I didn't miss something. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about the company page for a minute. This is my company page. And it's very easy to set up. There's very little information it actually needs. I have the same background photo as I have for my personal profile, because I want that to kind of all match. And then my team, you know, like our director of client success and my virtual assistant have the same background as well. and so that we're kind of all telling the same story. I know Mitch's team all uses the same background as well, just so that everybody looks very branded visually. If they're all interacting with clients in some way, everyone's telling the same story. So you can include your logo, the company name, a few keywords or a tagline about what you do. So this is where I've got this. And then the about section, which, we talked about a little bit. I really typically copy and paste my experience section into my about section because it's, I change it up a little bit, but the content is really going to be the same, and that's okay. Because again, it's really more about making sure the content is easy to be found. If it's in a couple different places to make sure people see it, that's okay. Because people may never read your experience section, but they may come straight to your company page and read the about. So, it's one of those things you want it in both places. And then just make sure that you have a visit website section so that it goes straight to your website, because that's a really great way to just, again, it legitimizes the business, lets people know you do have a website. If you don't have a website, see Mitch, and it just kind of gets everything all in one place. And once you have this company page set up, I don't do anything with my company page. I don't post from it. I don't try to manage followers or anything like that. I do that all from my personal page as the face of the business, because it's going to be more effective for you in the long run anyway. And that's what LinkedIn really promotes anyway. I could post the same thing from my company page and from my personal page. And this is before I had all the followers I have now on my personal page, but LinkedIn is going to favor my personal post anyway. And so it's really not helpful to spend a lot of time and effort on building your company page. It's really just more about having the company page. So I know somebody, I think it was Vernon, asked about that earlier, or somebody else, I don't remember. Anyway, but don't feel like you have to spend a ton of time building followers in both areas. You just need to have one. And it doesn't take long. All right, the other section I want to talk to you guys about is recommendations. This is a really important section that a lot of people don't use, but I love to use for a couple different reasons. But these are, it just adds social proof to your profile that you are a professional who does what they said they were going to do, that, that provided good work to your clients. And it just, it's more impactful, I find, than testimonials on your website, because it literally, connects with these people's profiles. So we can see that they're real. They're not just something I made up. It also helps with keyword optimization. The more recommendations you have, the higher you show up in searches as well. So I would suggest you try to seek out at least 3 to 5. This is also one of those things that's a missed opportunity for a lot of people that don't use the recommendation section. But it's a really important place to kind of grow your legitimacy as a real business here on LinkedIn. I also find that I can use it if clients ask if they can interview past clients, or, if prospects ask me, can I have a, can I talk to a referral or can I speak to someone for a recommendation? I often point them to my recommendation section on LinkedIn, and I have so many there that they then don't need to do that phone call, which is a little easier on my past clients. Now, if you haven't done it in the past, the way you ask for a recommendation, you have to be connected with someone on LinkedIn. So you have to be connected to them, and you go to their profile, and then next to the message button, there's a couple 3 dots, and you can click those 3 dots and get to request a recommendation. And then you can send them it'll basically send them a link, and you can add a little note to it saying, please, consider leaving a recommendation for our recent work to let other people know what it's like working together, something like that, just to personalize it a little bit. All right, now we're going to talk about growing your network. Before we get to this, does anybody have any questions about the profile? I know we went through it really quickly. We could dig into each of those sections in detail, but I know it's early for everyone and you've got day jobs.
Deborah, yes, the profile you were talking about was about the an account that is commercial, or is an account that is the regular account?
Yes, so the company page is for the commercial business.
Okay, because I don't have a commercial business, that's why I don't have it then. So you are talking about commercial business, right?
Yeah, if you have a separate business outside of just you, like if you go by a business name or something like that, that's the company page. But if you work for a company or you are part of a larger network or you're a broker or something like that, then you would be connected to that company, not you specific,
All
not
right.
company you make, you know, you build on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why connections matter. The more connections you have, the higher you show up in searches. Because if people look for, say, a resume writer, so I'm thinking about me here. If someone looks up, you know, executive resume writer, one of the criteria that LinkedIn's using to kind of rank everybody that they're sending back is whether you have any first or second degree connections. And so a first degree connection is, say, me and Jorge are connected together, then that would make us first degree connections. But then a second degree connection would be, if I'm connected to Jorge, then anyone who he is connected with is now automatically a second degree connection of mine. And then if someone in his network looks up executive resume writer, I'm going to show up higher than other resume writers who aren't connected with him. So that's why it's important to think about connections. I think a lot of people will be nervous about making connections on LinkedIn with people they don't know. But it's a really important part of growing your network from a lead generation standpoint. You know, it's one of those things we think about why we have LinkedIn, what we want out of the platform. If you're just using LinkedIn to, you know, as kind of a platform to keep track of all of your professional contacts, which is great, and some people that's all they need LinkedIn for, then you don't need to be actively growing connections. But for someone who's looking for it from a lead generation standpoint, connections are really, really helpful to help you show up in additional searches. As you're thinking about your connections, you know, who do you connect with? You know, think about your own circles first. So say everyone in this breakfast group, or everyone who you maybe volunteer with or on a board with, or any past or current colleagues, any past or current clients, past or current vendors. You know, really think about not just maybe your coworkers, but expand it out to vendors, clients, you know, committee members in any of your networking groups. Really think about how to build that group, you know, and those are all people you're going to know, and it makes it a little bit easier anyway to send connections to people that you know, right? Before you start maybe thinking about people outside of your network. But, you know, really expand it, you know, maybe past classmates, maybe if some of you guys just did a, you know, a certification course or a degree program or something like that, think about everyone in each of your classes, you know, to really start growing your connections, because again, every first or second degree connection helps you show up in searches.
Hey, Deborah.
Yes, sir.
Berenice asked, could you explain how to create 2 company pages?
Yes, so it would be the exact same process as building one company page, but you'd have it on separate, you'd have 2 different company pages, but you'd need 2 different experience sections. So like Dr. Sanders was talking about having the wine concierge, and then correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said you were a physician as well. And so you would have 2 different experience sections, and then under those experience sections, so when you create a company page, it I can do a screen share later and show you guys, like after the program, if you want to see what physically how to initiate a company page. But you can actually build as many company pages as you want. So I often create them for clients and then stay on as an admin. So like under my profile, I actually own several company pages, but only one actually shows up on my profile. But as many as you want can show up in your profile, as long as you have them connected to different experience sections. Does that make sense? It might make more sense if I just physically show you after the call.
Yeah, you can show us a little bit later. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, and so connection best practices. I just want to talk a little bit about, especially if you're connecting with someone who either A, might not remember you, or B, doesn't know you. It's really important to add a message in your connection request, just to let them know that you're not trying to sell them something, that you're not trying, you know, that you're not a bot or something like that. And so adding a message like, say, you know, if you guys all connect with each other because you were on this presentation together, you could say, you know, hey, Vernon, I was also on the breakfast group with Mitch Woolley this morning. I'd love to connect. Just something to let them know who you are and why you're connecting. Or, if it's not someone that you physically met through something like this, you could also say, like, if it's a prospect, you could say, hey, I ran into your profile because we're both connected with so-and-so, and I noticed you do X. I'd love to connect. Like, just something to make you look like a real person. And then, and this is easy to do. It automatically pops up when you're in on the desktop mode, but if you're connecting on mobile, it doesn't automatically show up, and there's a couple extra steps to that. It is important to do, though, to make sure your connection request gets approved. And so, if you want to see how to do it on mobile, we can talk about that offline as well, but there's a couple of extra steps to get to it. But it is possible. A lot of people don't think it's possible, but it is. It's just a little harder. And then expanding your reach organically. And this is by connecting with people who engage with your posts or engage with your content or your comments on other people's posts. I like to, so say if I make a comment on someone's post that is not mine, but then they respond to me or they like it or something like that, then I'll reach out and say, hey, thanks for your comment on, so-and-so's post today. I'd love to connect. If they're a good, if they're, in your wheelhouse of a potential prospect or maybe connected to potential prospects, you can be a little choosy about this. You don't need to connect with everyone on the planet. You still want a high quality network, but it doesn't have to be limited to people you've ever just met in person. And so, I try to, connect with people who, if I post something and people comment on it that I'm not already connected with, then I'll send a connection request to them. Thanks so much for your comment or your post. Or if you do a poll, and I know there's a lot of polls are unpopular because LinkedIn's algorithm promotes them so heavily that you see polls constantly, but a couple well thought out, valuable polls really help your engagement, and then you can expand your connections really quickly that way. And so, like, I'm not saying spam everyone with polls every 10 seconds, but if you have a couple really well thought out polls that matter to your audience, then doing that as a post will really help grow likes and comments and poll respondents that then you can send a connection request to. So that's a way to expand your reach organically. And then also, like I had mentioned, commenting on other people's content. I have gotten paid clients just by doing that. It really grows your visibility in other circles that aren't just your own. So, as you think about LinkedIn's, your LinkedIn strategy, it doesn't have to be just growing your own network and posting your own original content. It doesn't have to be that intense. If you're really, say you only have 5 minutes a day, I spend time engaging in other people's content all the time. And that includes past clients too. I want to make sure my clients, I'd like to stay top of mind. I want to know that I want them to know that I'm encouraging them and care about their success and things like that, especially because I do, a lot of job search stuff. And so I will connect, or I'll engage with their posts about their business or their job search or, their job announcements or whatever it may be, just to kind of stay top of mind. And also it lets other people know if I comment on, say, their job change or whatever it may be, then they know, then all of their connections who are engaging in their posts see my headline, they see my profile picture, they know what I do, and then they can reach out, if they choose to. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about posting best practices, but before I do that, does anybody have any questions about connections?
Deborah,
Yes, sir.
my first question was, how can you smoothly make the transition from connecting to someone to then turning around and selling to that person?
Great question. So that's always a tricky one, right?
Yeah. Why I asked the question.
I'm so glad you asked. What I suggest you do is if you connect with someone, I like to start a human connection with them a little bit. So if I send a connection request, which I do daily, or my virtual assistant does daily, we kind of tag team on that, and they accept my request, I just send a really, I don't want to say a basic message, but a very non-businessy message saying, thanks so much for connecting with me. It's great to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Something to kind of start a conversation that isn't going straight into business stuff. because then it just, kind of thanks them, lets them know you're thinking about them without being too, forward about your business. And then wait a while, connect or, engage in their content if they're posting. So if they post things, comment on their stuff. And it's better to comment versus like, because that makes sure that they see it. Just kind of engage in their information or what they're putting out there, and then make sure you're posting a little bit. They'll see your stuff a couple times. It just kind of, it helps build that credibility. And then you can send another message later saying something like, I don't know what business you're in, but I like to do things like, I do a lot of, well, my prospecting on LinkedIn is really more around finding partners than it is direct clients. We can talk a little bit about that strategy as well. But, sending something that's not necessarily salesy as much as it is, hey, I'd love to, get to know a little bit more about your business. Here are the things that I do, I'd love to, chat more or something. And it just kind of gives them a little bit, and then maybe give them a little bit of free information, just to kind of build that rapport a little bit, and not, and you just don't want to look like a robot who's reaching out to everybody, if that makes sense. But just kind of giving it a little bit of time makes it more organic than if you did it right away.
Okay. And my second question was, what is the value of LinkedIn groups?
Almost nothing. They're really, really pointless. In fact, actually, so there's a LinkedIn super users group that talks about how, all of the updated, features on LinkedIn and best practices and research and all of this. And it exists on Facebook because LinkedIn groups suck so bad.
Don't hold back. Just tell us how you think.
So that's how I feel about groups now. And a lot of people want to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn groups. The problem is LinkedIn groups have been, it's really interesting, and I won't nerd out on you as much as I want to nerd out on you about this, but LinkedIn has been pulling back the visibility of their groups over the last couple of years to almost nothing. LinkedIn groups mean nothing. But because everyone is now moving all of their stuff to Facebook, because Facebook groups are really rich and helpful. In fact, getting on the LinkedIn super users group and or master users group, whatever it's called, and then a couple of the career industry ones I'm on is the only reason I ever get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is now starting to beta test new groups and new functionality. So just right now they're in beta testing to kind of revamp their groups, but as it stands right now, they're almost pointless. The only thing I would say is there are old legacy groups that are still in LinkedIn that have like over 1 million members, and those are worth joining only because everyone then becomes a second degree connection. It helps you show up in searches. You're never going to see anything from the group. It's not helpful in any way from a content perspective, but it does help you show up in searches. I'm really excited about the beta testing on what they're doing with groups though, and I hope that it gets to be more robust in the future.
Okay.
Any other questions about connections or groups or stuff before we talk about posting? All right, great. And Mitch, quick time, because I'm just about done, but I just want to make sure I don't go over. I could chat about this all day.
That's actually a Vernon question and an attendee question, because I think if they had to go, they would just probably drop out. But I think this is some good information. How do you guys feel about it?
As long as we've got you, we want to get as much information as possible, Deborah, understanding that we usually go until 9 o'clock. And for those people that have to drop off, we understand. However, the numbers seem to be fairly consistent to stay and listen to what you're sharing. So, your time is our time.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Vernon. All right, so let's talk about posting. This, I know it can be scary for a lot of people, and people tend to not post because they don't know what to post, or they don't know the best practice on how to post, or you feel like you're posting things and no one responds, no one engages, and you think, okay, well, that was pointless. Why am I wasting my time? You spend a lot of time and energy, editing something and thinking about the content and writing original content, and you post it out there and it's crickets, and you're like, this is stupid. But there are some ways to elevate the visibility of your posts, which we're going to talk about. And there's some ways to just think about your content without having to reinvent the wheel. And it just makes it a lot easier and a lot, lower barrier of entry into posting to kind of help grow your visibility. what I would suggest is a lot of people only post when they have big news to share. And the hard thing about that is if you post regularly, you're building your audience and you're building, and the more people that engage in your content, LinkedIn will then continue to push your content. And so when you do have big news to share, people will see it. So think about all of the other posts you do as really kind of priming the pump for when you have something big to share, there's an audience already built in to know that, to see your big news, rather than it going out there to a blank slate and no one's commenting, no one's, connecting or engaging with it. So think about, not every post is going to result in a lead, but every post is helping build your credibility, build your audience, build LinkedIn's confidence in your ability to, have quality content, the algorithm's confidence. And that helps you, show up further. So it's a long game. And I know it can be frustrating at first, but if you continue on, it really does help. It really does help your visibility in the long run. And so I want to talk about some of the things you can post. It doesn't have to just be those long form, stories about your day, or, a lot of like LinkedIn influencers or, thought leaders will, write out these long posts. You don't have to do that, especially if you don't have a ton to say. I know even me, I try to do like maybe one of those a week, and they take me forever, and it's painful because that's not something, writing about myself for a story or something like that is not something that comes naturally to me. I write for other people. So I definitely understand that it can be daunting, but you can write those posts. You can write short posts about just like a tip about your industry, or so the gentleman that does that has the company on mindfulness, maybe like once a week do a tip on mindfulness, or share a story about a client, or share a maybe some research in the space of mindfulness or something like that. Think about your pillars of content too. There's think about what you want people to know about you and what you want to post, right? It can be kind of daunting to think about, oh my gosh, what am I going to post about? Well, for me, I only post about a set number of things because I want to stay in my lane. I care about the news and all of these other things, and I have hobbies and things that I enjoy. But I try to really only post about things that I want people to know me for. And so I like to stay in my lane. So I only post about job search stuff, the executive job market, LinkedIn best practices, interviewing best practices, things like that. I stay in my lane. That way my audience knows what they can get from me, right? And so if you can, offer interesting information, tips, industry news, things like that, all of that is great things to post. Rather than thinking about the universe of options. If you're in an industry that has a lot of news, or there's, articles or things like that, I like to, as I scroll the news or scroll different, like on Flipboard or things like that, I like to keep, save articles and then post about them later. The one thing I want to say about posting about articles, it's great to post things that maybe go to a news site and then, or a news article, and then you can post a little bit about that content, so you can say, this article by Forbes had some really interesting information about blah, blah, blah. You can add a couple sentences about your take on it so that people know why you're posting it. The problem is if you post with a link that goes to an outside of LinkedIn article, LinkedIn actually doesn't give much visibility to your post because they don't want people going outside of the platform. So the mistake I see a lot of people make is that they will post these articles. They look great because they've got a photo. They look really professional, but then it falls flat. No one ever sees it. And it's not because it wasn't great content, but it's because LinkedIn isn't giving it the visibility it would give other posts. And so a way around that, I like to tell people that works best for me, and that the LinkedIn nerds have done exhausting studies on it, is if you still do the same blurb you would do about the article, and then say see comments for the link, and then add the link to the article in your comments. And if you still want to add a photo of the article or something so it still is visually interesting, you can. You don't necessarily have to. It doesn't really make a big difference on engagement. But you can still include the article. You can still share industry news, but then in such a way that LinkedIn actually will promote and let other people see. And then hashtags are getting a little bit more effective in LinkedIn. The jury's still out, in my opinion. Other LinkedIn nerds are really into it. So best practice right now is if you're going to post something, add about 3 hashtags. There are lists that you can just, from a quick Google search, look at like the top hashtags for LinkedIn to see like who's really following some of them, because you don't want to do some obscure hashtag no one's following. And because they're fairly new in LinkedIn anyway, there's not, I think the most followed hashtag has like 35 million, and that's something general like leadership. Everything else is, there's a lot fewer people following hashtags. So anyway, that's kind of it's new, they're working on it, but it might not hurt from an engagement standpoint. Like we'd mentioned briefly, polls tend to annoy people, but also have unreal engagement. The best engagement I've ever had in my posts have all come from polls. I try not to overdo it because they do, some people are annoyed by them because there's so many in the platform right now. But again, if you do a poll that is meaningful to your audience and isn't just the, how would you prefer to work in the future, that one everyone is doing, but something that's interesting to your audience, things like that, then polls can be a really great way to grow your visibility. I mean, every time I do a poll, I get, a ton of new connections. So it is helpful to think about polls. The other thing you can do is short form video. You can do a short video about, your work or something going on, or your tip, if the gentleman that does the mindfulness wants to do, Tip Tuesday and do a video of you talking about, whatever it is in mindfulness that you can do. I know I follow a woman who has a positivity podcast. And I listen to it every morning as part of like I listen to the news and then I end on this positivity podcast. It's usually about 5 minutes long every morning. And it just kind of sets my day up for, to feel good about my day and like think about something, that isn't the news. And she has a LinkedIn profile and she just posts tips about positivity or fun stories or, things that are uplifting or things like that. And I follow her on LinkedIn as well because I just, I appreciate her content. So that's something to think about with your business as well. And then the other thing I want to say is, and we can talk about posting best practices all day if you want, but because there's a ton in there, but the big things I want you to know is just don't post links in your actual post because LinkedIn won't give it any visibility, and just make sure you're doing it regularly. Like I've been out of town for a couple weeks now, which is the longest vacation I've taken in a million years. But I haven't been posting, and I know when I get back, it's going to take me a couple weeks to build back up my visibility on my posts because LinkedIn really, LinkedIn rewards consistency. And so the more you can be consistent, and it doesn't mean you have to post every day, 1 to 3 times a week, as long as you're doing it consistently, will help build that, that, like I said, that long game of a profile that, that really will help drive, lead generation and keep you top of mind for your clients. But the other thing I want to say is, make sure you're engaging. That's really, really important. I see people post and then people will comment, but they're not engaging back with the comments. And it's really important to engage, because if people are going to take the time to comment on one of your posts, you need to take the time to respond to them so they know they're being heard, so they continue to engage in the future. And the reason comments are important is when you first post, and I'm going to dive into some nerd stats for a second, but it'll help you understand what's happening on the back end. Because a lot of times people will post and no one will comment or no one will engage, and they'll think, oh, all of my 5,000 connections didn't like my content. But that's not what's really happening. What's happening is when you send a post, the LinkedIn algorithm checks it for quality, basically, and making, all done through AI. They're checking it for, content quality. If it passes muster, so they'll send it to a small group of your connections first, usually the connections that engage with your content the most. And if it, after about 3 hours, gets some engagement and gets some comments and likes and things like that, mostly comments though, are weighted heavier, then it'll expand it out to more of your connections and so on and so on. It doesn't just go out to everyone automatically. LinkedIn's testing it to just make sure that it's quality content. And so the reason I'm telling you all this is because comments early on are really important for the success of your post to get out to more people. And so the more people that comment on your content, the better, and the more your post will get seen. And so I have a couple people who I've met through webinars like this who routinely comment on my posts. They're not necessarily my ideal target market. Like they would never be clients of mine, but they're really great advocates for my content because they're unknowingly, they're building my visibility more than the average person would, and so they're seeing it, so more people are seeing it, right? And so every time they comment, I engage in their comment so that they know they're being heard, and they know they're that their comments are are appreciated, and that someone's reading it, right? So make sure that you take the time pretty immediately, as much as you can, to engage in the comments that people are leaving, especially if you're asking a question of your network. So if you're saying something like how do you incorporate mindfulness at work or something like that, and people are answering, make sure to thank them for their response, maybe add a little thought about what they said or things like that. If you're asking for something of them, make sure you're giving back in as well. And same thing with if you're commenting on your network's posts, if someone says something back to you, engage back with them. It just helps kind of build that human connection when you're not actually talking. I want to circle back a little bit because we talked a little bit about how to send a connection request, and then talk about and then how to move that to a selling stage. Instead of connecting with people that would be direct prospects for me, I actually, in my business, I like to connect with people who would be great referrers. So any great partners that would maybe send referrals my way. So like my strategy, and that works really well for me, is I connect with executive recruiters and headhunters because they're getting executive candidates who are looking for jobs, who are ready to start their job search, who are also typically asking, can you help me with my resume? They ask recruiters that all the time, and recruiters don't write resumes for the most part. And so they send me referrals. And so I like to connect with them and then give them, tips and tricks and different information about resume writing. And then when they have a candidate who asks that question, they send them to me. So the majority of my prospecting on LinkedIn comes from, number one, being optimized in my profile, and number two, coming from referrals from referral, partners like executive headhunters. And so think about, not just who your target market would be, but who great referral partners would be for you, or adjacent, businesses that may have opportunities to refer. So like, I actually get a ton of referrals from other resume writers because we don't all do the same thing. Not everyone works with high-level executives, and vice versa. I don't work with, for the most part, I don't work with like new college grads, things like that. And so I actually have a really deep, rich network of other resume writers where, on the surface, we'd look like competitors, but we actually engage in each other's content a ton because we're all nerds about the same thing. And we send referrals to each other because we don't all do the same thing, or we don't all have the same bandwidth to do the same thing. So sometimes people will want something immediately, or they'll want something that's outside of our area of expertise. And so we send referrals to each other all the time. And it's really important to really think about, not just who would pay for your services, but who could maybe send people to pay for your services. And that helps a little bit because then, like with my work, I do a one-time project, and then I'll usually do updates, for clients that come back, every couple of years or so. But it's not something, I don't do long-term engagements with clients for the most part. So I don't want to spend all of my time on LinkedIn trying to sell to one-off people, because I do short-term projects. And so it's more impactful for me to spend my time building relationships with partners who could refer on an ongoing basis than it is to try to find that one person who may pay for the service. Any questions about posting or engagement?
No.
All right, this is great. Okay, and then so I'm happy to kind of get in and do some screen share on some of these things that we talked about for anyone who has time. I know we've gone way over, but I want to just see, does anybody have any questions kind of in general about some of the things we talked about? Or anything that doesn't make sense, or
Come on, I know we're not all experts. Come on.
I have a couple questions. Some of them may be offline questions, so I'll tell you kind of go quickly.
yeah.
One, I'm trying to really understand the value of LinkedIn Premium.
Oh, such a great question. I'm so glad you asked. So LinkedIn Premium is sometimes valuable depending on what you're doing. And so such a great question. I tell people, unless you're going to use the Sales Navigator, which is the highest level LinkedIn Premium outside of the Recruiter, which you don't need, which is thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay, a couple things. There's several tiers to the LinkedIn Premium, right? The top tier is Sales Navigator. It allows you to build lists of potential prospects and then follow their stuff on LinkedIn, so you can quickly see, like, did they post something, so you can engage quickly, things like that. It helps you, like, so if you're really looking to build, if you're really like focusing on individual prospects a lot and you're going to build lists and things like that, then Sales Navigator is the most robust at doing that. But it is a little bit more expensive. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, so I don't want to say, but it's over $100 a month. If you are just wanting to use LinkedIn kind of through the way we talked about, maybe organically building lead generation by, connecting with your network, engaging with the network, showing up in potential searches, things like that. If it's really more of an organic long game than it is really focusing on lead generation heavily through Sales Navigator, then it is important to have a premium profile, but you can have the lowest level. So it's fine to have, say, the career version, which I don't want to speak off turn. I don't remember, they just changed pricing, but
Deborah, I put a link in there to the pricing for LinkedIn.
Perfect, thank you. Anyway, you can do the lowest level, because really, if you're just doing it organically, the benefit to LinkedIn Premium is that you have unlimited searches for different people each month. What I find a lot of people run into when they find that they need LinkedIn Premium is when you really start using LinkedIn actively and you're looking up potential prospects, or you're looking up people to connect with, or you're getting, you're looking up each person that you're getting ready to meet with, things like that. When you really start using it in earnest, LinkedIn actually only gives you a certain number of searches a month before it realizes you're using it for commercial activity. And then it limits, then you can't look for any more people that month. And so that's the benefit to having the LinkedIn Premium. You can send also like maybe 5 in-mails a month. It's not a ton of in-mails. And that's when you're sending messages to people you're not already connected with. But the real value is just not being limited in your ability to search. I know it was a long answer, but there's kind of a couple different answers to that question.
That's helpful, thank you. Because it adds up, and so I want to make sure I'm using it wisely.
It does add up. And that's one of those things, like, because my business is on LinkedIn, it's worth it for me to pay for me and my director of client success and a couple other people who are constantly on LinkedIn. If it's something where you're really just posting and after you say, and don't pay for the year, because it's something where after you really do the blitz to build your network, you may not need to pay for it all year, and that's okay. You can come and go from it too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, great. I'm so glad you asked. Any other questions like that? Any general LinkedIn stuff?
I have a question. Deborah, what would you recommend? We really want to use LinkedIn as a recruiting platform. So instead of looking for a prospect, what would you recommend if you want to look for talent?
Okay, really great question. So LinkedIn has a recruiter tier. Have you seen that tier? The only reason I ask is, have you looked into it? It is really robust, but also wildly expensive.
Yeah. That was our experience. We did pay for a recruiter, and we had a good experience with some positions who did not require a lot of credentials or studies, but we did have some trouble with another positions where we needed to look for someone who had more experience or more credentials.
Right. Okay. Such a great question. So if that's the case, it's important to have a company page because it may make more sense to post jobs through the company page to have people apply. And, as a way to source potential candidates. The other option is to switch to Sales Navigator instead of Recruiter. And in using Sales Navigator, you can search. It's not as robust as as the Recruiter database is, because you can't look at some of the fields that you can in the Recruiter, but that's why it's also wildly expensive. But in Sales Navigator, you can still build lists of potential candidates and then reach out to them through InMails. And so that is an option because you can build lists based on, location, their industry, their job title, some of their skills, things like that. So you can still use Sales Navigator to help build lists of potential candidates. It'll just be a little bit harder to narrow down into the nitty gritty like you can in Recruiter.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. But it would be a lot cheaper. So that's helpful. All right. Any other questions, guys? And if anybody has a question offline, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can pop my my information here in the chat. I'm happy to give more information. I am traveling until Monday, but then I'll be back and ready to hit the ground running.
Okay.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much, guys, for your your patience with me and for spending some time with me this morning. I really enjoyed talking through this stuff. I really love helping business owners grow their visibility in LinkedIn. It's been transformational for my business. And so, if you really start using it in earnest, I know it can be for yours too. So I'm really excited for you guys.
We appreciate your being here this morning, Deborah, and certainly going for the extra time and giving us the information. I want to thank Mitch Woolley for making sure that this was all recorded so that when the time comes and we need to go back and refer to some of the gems that you dropped, we can. And most definitely, I will be sure to connect with you on
Please
LinkedIn.
Please, everyone, connect with me. I share tips and tricks on LinkedIn and job search stuff and just business growth stuff all the time.
We appreciate that. Thank you so very much.